Someone was living in my attic and eating our leftovers. The first time food disappeared from our refrigerator, I blamed my husband. There had been half a roast left from Sunday dinner, wrapped in foil on the second shelf. I had planned to slice it for sandwiches before work. On Monday morning, the foil was still there. It had been folded into a neat square and placed back on the shelf. The meat was gone. "Very funny," I said when Graham walked into the kitchen. He stopped beside the coffee maker. "What is? You ate the roast and put the empty foil back." I didn't touch it. Our 16-year-old daughter Paige looked up from her phone. Maybe Owen ate it. Her 12-year-old brother was still asleep upstairs. "Owen doesn't neatly fold foil," I said. "Neither do I," Graham replied. He smiled as though the mystery had been solved by proving his innocence. I checked the trash. No bones, no greasy paper towels, no plate in the sink. Nothing. The back door was locked. The kitchen windows were latched. Our alarm had not sounded. I decided one of them had eaten it and did not want to admit it. At the time, that seemed more reasonable than the truth. 3 nights later, I woke to a creak above our bedroom, not beside us, above us. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. Our house was built in the 1940s. It made noises whenever the temperature changed. Pipes clicked. Wood settled. The old heating vents sometimes produced hollow knocks that traveled from room to room, but this sound was different. One slow groan, then another, as though weight were moving across the attic floor. Graham slept beside me with one arm across his face. I waited. The noise stopped directly above the foot of our bed. A soft scrape followed, then silence. I reached over and touched Graham's shoulder. He jerked awake. "What happened?" "There's something in the attic." He listened for 10 seconds. Nothing moved. "Probably a raccoon. We don't have any openings in the roof." Then a squirrel. That sounded heavier than a squirrel. He sat up and listened again. The house remained still. "I'll check tomorrow," he said. He was asleep again before I was. The next morning, the leftover lasagna was gone. The glass baking dish was sitting clean and dry in the dishwasher. I had not run the dishwasher. Neither had Graham. Paige denied eating the lasagna. Owen said he hated the spinach in it. This time, I believed them. Someone had removed food from our refrigerator during the night, eaten it, washed the dish and placed it in the dishwasher without waking any of us. I checked the alarm history through the security app. The system had been armed at 10:41 p.m. and disarmed by me at 6:12 a.m. No doors had opened. No windows had opened. No motion sensor downstairs had been triggered, yet the lasagna had vanished. Graham examined the alarm panel before leaving for work. Could be a bad sensor. All of them, one bad log. Maybe someone opened the door and it didn't register. Who? He looked toward the stairs. Paige had already left for school. Owen was searching for his backpack. "We have teenagers," he said quietly. "One teenager. Close enough." I wanted him to be right. That evening, I placed a strip of clear tape across the refrigerator doors. I pressed it flat at the seam, then marked one corner with a tiny dot of blue ink. No one knew I had done it. At 11, I checked the kitchen. The tape was intact. At 2:17, another creak woke me. This time, I did not wake Graham. I slipped out of bed and stood in the hallway. A faint light glowed downstairs. I could see it along the edge of the kitchen doorway. The refrigerator was open. Someone stood in front of it. I saw a shoulder first, then the outline of a head. The person was thin and slightly hunched, wearing something dark. I froze near the top of the stairs. The figure reached into the refrigerator and removed a plastic container. A floorboard shifted beneath my foot. The figure turned. The refrigerator light illuminated part of a face. A pale cheek. A dark beard, wide, startled eyes. Then the refrigerator door slammed shut. The kitchen went dark. I screamed. The figure moved with terrifying speed. I heard a chair strike the tile, followed by 3 quick footsteps and a thud from the pantry. By the time Graham reached the hallway, I was already halfway downstairs. "What happened?" "Someone's in the house." He grabbed the wooden baseball bat Owen kept beside the coat rack. I turned on the kitchen light. No one was there. The pantry door stood open. Inside were canned vegetables, paper towels, cleaning supplies, and the folding ladder we used to reach the attic hatch. The ladder was unfolded. Its top rested beneath a square opening in the pantry ceiling. The attic hatch was gone. Above us was a black rectangle. Graham stared upward. My legs began to shake. "He went up there," I whispered. Graham pulled me back from the ladder. "Take the kids outside." I called 911 while he moved toward the pantry. The dispatcher told us not to search the house. We woke Paige and Owen, led them through the front door, and waited in the car across the street. 2 patrol officers arrived within 6 minutes. A third came shortly afterward with a dog. They searched every room before entering the attic. I expected them to bring someone down in handcuffs. Instead, one officer returned carrying a dirty blanket. The second carried an empty plastic container that had held our lasagna. The attic was empty, but someone had been living there. The officers found a narrow sleeping space between 2 roof supports, hidden behind stacked insulation boards. There was a folded sleeping bag, 3 bottles of water, a flashlight, food wrappers, and one of our bath towels. A plastic bucket had been placed in the far corner. Beside the sleeping bag was a small notebook. The first half contained lists of numbers. The second half contained details about our family. Graham leaves 7:20. Paige bus 7:34. Boy leaves 8:05 with mother. Tuesday grocery delivery. Friday pizza. Alarm at night. Dog next door barks at trucks. There were 6 pages of observations. The final entry had been written the previous day. They are starting to notice. The police searched the yard, neighboring properties, and the drainage ditch behind our street. They found a loose section of soffit beneath the rear roof line. It had been carefully cut and reattached with small magnets. Whoever had entered our attic had not come through a door or window. He had climbed the trellis beside our back porch, crossed the lower roof, and slipped through the soffit. From there, he could enter the pantry through the attic hatch whenever he wanted. The clear tape I had placed across the refrigerator was still unbroken. He had peeled it away from one side, opened the door, and pressed it back exactly where I had placed it. Only the blue dot had moved. The police asked whether we recognized the man I had seen. I described the beard, the thin frame, and the dark clothing. The moment I mentioned his hunched posture, Graham looked at me. "What?" I asked. "There's someone on the next street." The officers waited. "His name is Nathan Vale," Graham said. "He lives in the blue house behind the drainage ditch." I knew the house. Everyone did. Its gutters sagged. The grass was always too long. A rusted van sat in the driveway, though I had never seen it move. I had seen Nathan walking at night. He was somewhere in his 40s, with dark hair and a beard. He kept his shoulders rounded and his eyes lowered. He had once repaired gutters and roofs in the neighborhood before a fall left him with an injured back. He knew houses. More importantly, he knew roofs. The officers went to question him. Nathan was not home. His van was cold. His phone went directly to voicemail. A neighbor said he had not seen him in 2 days. By sunrise, the police considered him their primary suspect. By noon, I did too. It fit too perfectly. Nathan had the skills to enter through the soffit. He lived close enough to watch our routine. His injury explained the hunched posture. When an officer showed me a photograph from Nathan's driver's license, I felt certain. That could be him. Could be was enough to turn fear into conviction. The police advised us to stay elsewhere while they collected evidence and repaired the attic opening. We spent 2 nights at Graham's sister's house. I did not sleep. Every small noise reminded me that a stranger had rested above our bedrooms while we ate dinner, argued over homework, and watched television. He had listened to us. He had waited until we slept. He knew when I bought groceries and when our children left for school. The stolen food bothered me more than the sleeping bag. Eating our leftovers felt intimate. It meant he had watched us serve the meal. He knew exactly what remained. On Wednesday morning, a detective named Chen called. They had found Nathan. He had been sleeping in his van behind an abandoned warehouse 6 miles away. He denied entering our house. He agreed to an interview and allowed officers to search the van. They found rope, work gloves, roofing tools, and several packets of crackers. They did not find our property. Nathan's fingerprints were not on the containers recovered from our attic. His boots did not match the partial print found on the pantry shelf. The man I had seen was thin. Nathan was not. His driver's license photograph was 4 years old, taken before his injury and before he had gained nearly 50 pounds. Detective Chen asked me to view him through a one-way window. I knew immediately that he was not the person from our kitchen. Nathan's beard was gray at the sides. The man I had seen had darker facial hair. Nathan moved slowly and leaned heavily on a cane. He could not have crossed our roof or climbed into the attic. "I'm sorry," I told the detective. "You did exactly what you were supposed to do," she said, but I had done more than describe what I saw. I had helped transform an isolated neighbor into a suspect because the explanation was convenient. Nathan was released that afternoon. The mystery should have become smaller. Instead, it became worse. The man from our attic was still free, and we no longer had a name. When we returned home, the police had sealed the soffit and installed a lock on the attic hatch. Graham added motion sensors in the pantry and cameras outside. I added one more camera inside the kitchen. For 3 nights, nothing happened. On the 4th, the camera recorded movement at 1:46 a.m. I received the alert while lying awake. I grabbed Graham's arm and showed him the screen. The kitchen was empty, then the attic hatch moved, not down, up. Someone inside the pantry was pushing it upward from below. The lock remained closed. The hatch lifted less than an inch, then settled back into place. A shadow crossed the edge of the frame. The motion sensor did not trigger. No person appeared. We called the police again. They searched the house and attic. No one was found. The hatch had fresh marks around the frame, but the padlock was intact. Detective Chen reviewed the video several times. "The camera angle doesn't show the pantry floor," she said. "Could one of your children have been in there?" "No." "Could the hatch have shifted because of air pressure?" "It was pushed." She did not disagree, but she could not explain how. Graham removed everything from the pantry. Behind a shelving unit, he found a narrow vertical gap where the wall did not meet the chimney. It was only 3 inches wide, too small for a person. At the bottom of the gap was a crumpled piece of paper. It was a grocery receipt. The date was from the previous Saturday. The store was less than a mile away. The receipt listed batteries, bottled water, canned soup, and a pack of peppermint gum. At the bottom, a loyalty number ended in 4472. I checked my account. Those were the last 4 digits of my grocery membership. Someone had used our phone number. The receipt time was 3:18 p.m. I had been at that store at 3:18 p.m. I remembered because Paige had called while I was standing in the checkout line. Someone had not simply watched our house. He had followed me. Detective Chen requested the store's security footage. The next afternoon, she showed us still images. At 3:12 p.m., I entered the store. At 3:14, a man in a dark baseball cap followed me through the same entrance. At 3:17, he stood 2 checkout lanes away, holding batteries and canned soup. His face was turned from the camera. He wore a loose gray jacket and kept his head down, but his posture matched the figure I had seen in our kitchen. At 3:21, he left through the side doors. The camera in the parking lot caught him walking toward a dark sedan. The license plate was hidden by mud. Graham leaned close to the screen. "Go back." Detective Chen replayed the clip. The man opened the driver's door with his right hand. Around his wrist was a strip of bright orange fabric. "What is that?" I asked. "A wristband, maybe," she said. Graham paused the image. "No. It's a lanyard." The orange strip hung from beneath the man's sleeve. There was something printed on it in white, but the image was too blurred to read. I stared at it until the shape triggered a memory. 3 weeks earlier, a plumbing inspector had visited our house. We had been refinancing, and the lender required a full inspection because of the home's age. The inspector wore an Orange Company lanyard. His name was Colin Mercer. He had spent nearly 3 hours inside the house. He had entered every room. He had inspected the attic. I told Detective Chen. She found the company within an hour. Colin had worked there for 11 months. His supervisor described him as quiet, reliable, and unusually thorough. He had been assigned to inspect our property. He had not reported to work since Monday. His address was not in our neighborhood. It was 20 miles away, but his emergency contact was. His mother lived in the blue house behind the drainage ditch. Nathan Vale was not the neighbor who had entered our attic. Colin Mercer was Nathan's half-brother. Colin had lived in that house until 6 months earlier. The police searched his apartment. It was almost empty. There was a mattress on the floor, several unpaid bills, and a stack of eviction notices. In a kitchen drawer, they found a copy of our inspection report. In his closet, they found an orange lanyard. They also found photographs of our house. Not photographs taken from the street, photographs taken inside. Our pantry, our attic hatch, the space between the roof supports, our refrigerator, a close-up of the security panel showing its model number. Colin had used the inspection to study the house before choosing it. Detective Chen issued a warrant for his arrest. For several hours, I believed the mystery had been solved. Colin had lost his apartment. He knew our house. His mother lived nearby. He had found a way into our attic and used it as a hidden place to sleep. It was disturbing, but understandable. Then Detective Chen called again. The fingerprints in the attic did not match Colin Mercer. His fingerprints were in the house from the inspection, but not on the water bottles, notebook, flashlight, or food containers. The partial boot print did not match his shoes. The handwriting in the notebook did not match samples from his apartment or employment records. "We still believe he's involved," she said, "but we may be dealing with two people." That should have frightened me. Instead, something about it felt wrong. Two people complicated the explanation without clarifying anything. Colin had photographed the attic. Someone else had lived there. Why would a man facing eviction prepare a hiding place for another person? And why would that person follow me to the grocery store wearing Colin's company lanyard? I asked Detective Chen whether Colin owned the dark sedan from the footage. "No, he drives a white pickup." "What about Nathan?" "His van doesn't run." "Then whose car was it?" "We're checking." That evening, I studied the inspection report. Colin had marked the roof, foundation, and plumbing as satisfactory. The attic section included 4 photographs. One showed the hatch. One showed the insulation. One showed the roof supports. The 4th showed the rear soffit from inside the attic. A small handwritten arrow pointed to a line in the wood. Beside it, Colin had written, "Previous access point, professionally sealed." I read the sentence again. "Previous access point." The police believed Colin had cut the soffit after inspecting our house. But the report showed it had already been altered. Someone had entered the attic before Colin arrived. I called Detective Chen. She asked me to send the page immediately. An hour later, she came to the house. "Do you know who owned the property before you?" she asked. "We bought it from a couple named Randall and Susan Price." "How long ago?" 8 years. "Did they disclose a break-in or structural repair near the attic?" "Not that I remember." Graham retrieved the closing documents from a file cabinet. There was no mention of an attic repair. Detective Chen searched property records. Randall Price had died 3 years earlier. Susan lived in a retirement community outside Richmond. She agreed to speak with us by phone. At first, she remembered nothing about the soffit. Then I described the location. "The panel near the trellis?" she asked. "Yes, that wasn't damage. Randall built it. The room seemed to tighten around me." "Why?" There was a long pause. "He used to store things up there." "What things?" "Tools, cash sometimes." "He didn't trust banks. Why make an exterior entrance?" "Because I wouldn't allow him to install a pull-down staircase in the kitchen." Detective Chen leaned toward the phone. "Mrs. Price, did anyone else know about that entrance?" "My son." "What is his name?" "Evan." She said it reluctantly. "Where's Evan now?" "I don't know." Susan explained that Evan Price had been 28 when his parents sold us the house. He had struggled with addiction, theft, and long periods of homelessness. Randall had allowed him to sleep in the attic when Susan refused to let him stay in the main house. Evan could enter through the soffit without waking her. After they decided to sell, Randall sealed the opening. Evan was furious. He insisted the attic belonged to him because he had helped reinforce the flooring and build the concealed sleeping area. 3 weeks before closing, he disappeared. Susan had not spoken to him since. Detective Chen asked for a photograph. When it arrived, my stomach turned. The picture was 9 years old. Evan was thin, dark-haired, and bearded. He had a slight hunch in his shoulders. It could have been the man in my kitchen. But Evan had never met Colin Mercer. At least there was no obvious connection. One man knew the house's present layout. The other knew its hidden past. Someone had brought those two pieces together. Detective Chen finally found the dark sedan from the grocery footage. The plate had not been covered with mud. It had been digitally blurred by the store's privacy software in the copy originally provided. The unedited footage showed the number clearly. The sedan belonged to Colin Mercer. He had registered it 6 years earlier and transferred the title the previous month. The new owner was Evan Price. Colin and Evan had met. The police traced the sale through an online classified listing. Colin had advertised the car. Evan answered. Their message history had been deleted from Colin's phone, but a cloud backup preserved part of it. Evan had asked what Colin did for work. Colin said he performed residential inspections. Evan then asked whether Colin had ever inspected an old brick house on Hawthorne Lane, our house. At first, Colin said no. 2 weeks later, our inspection was assigned to him. The messages changed. Colin sent Evan a photograph of the attic hatch. Evan replied with directions to the hidden sleeping space and exterior panel. Colin sent more photographs, then Evan wrote, "Still there." Colin answered, "Exactly where you said. They had not chosen our house at random. Evan had been waiting for a way back inside. Colin provided it." Detective Chen believed Evan had promised Colin money hidden in the attic. Randall Price had once kept cash there. Evan claimed some remained behind the insulation. Colin expected a share in exchange for documenting the security system and confirming that the exterior access point still existed. But no money had been found. That explained Colin's photographs. It explained Evan's knowledge. It did not explain why Evan had stayed. "He entered looking for cash," Graham said after the detective left. "When he didn't find it, he used the attic because he had nowhere else." I wanted that to be the answer. Then I remembered the notebook. Graham leaves 7:20. Page bus 7:34. Boy leaves 8:05 with mother. Evan had not merely hidden in the attic while searching. He had tracked us. He knew our schedule because he was planning something. The following morning, Paige found an envelope inside her backpack. It had no name on it. Inside was a photograph of her standing at the bus stop. On the back, someone had written 3 numbers, 7:34. The exact time recorded in the attic notebook. Paige began crying before I finished reading it. We called the police. Detective Chen treated the photograph as a threat. Officers were assigned near the schools. Graham stayed home. I drove both children to a relative's house outside the county. On my way back, Detective Chen called. They had located Colin's pickup in the parking lot of a motel. Colin was inside. He surrendered without resistance. Evan was not with him. During questioning, Colin admitted helping Evan enter our attic, but his reason was not money. Evan had told him something had been hidden inside the house before his parents sold it. Not cash. Evidence. Colin believed Evan's father had committed financial crimes and concealed records proving it. Evan claimed the documents could be sold to one of Randall's former business partners. Colin photographed our inspection report and gave Evan information about our alarm. In exchange, Evan promised him $10,000. Colin insisted he had never entered the house after the inspection. He had not lived in the attic. He had not followed me to the store. He had lent Evan the orange lanyard because Evan said reflective clothing would make him look like a utility worker if anyone saw him near the roof. Then, Colin revealed something that changed the investigation. Evan had found the documents during his first night in the attic. He showed Colin photographs of them, old bank records, property ledgers, handwritten lists of payments. Colin expected Evan to leave. Instead, Evan said he needed to remain in the attic. He believed something else was hidden in our house, something his father had never allowed him to see. "What?" I asked Detective Chen. "Colin says Evan called it the red ledger." I looked at Graham. Neither of us knew what that meant. Detective Chen continued. According to Colin, Evan became convinced the ledger was somewhere below the attic. He believed his father had built a second hiding place inside the walls. That was why the attic hatch had lifted while locked. Evan had not been trying to enter the pantry from above. He had already been inside the wall. The 3-inch gap beside the chimney was only narrow at the visible edge. Behind the pantry wall was an enclosed service cavity left from an old ventilation shaft. It ran from the attic to the basement. Evan had discovered it when he was younger. Our house had not contained one hidden space. It had contained a vertical passage connecting all 3 floors. Evan could move between the attic and basement without using the pantry hatch. The police had searched the attic twice and the rooms below it. They had never searched inside the walls. Officers returned with a building specialist. They removed a panel behind the pantry shelving. Beyond it was a shaft nearly 2 feet wide. Dust covered the lower braces, except where someone had recently climbed. At the bottom was a broken vent grill leading into a basement storage room. That room contained shelves of holiday decorations, paint cans, and boxes we had never unpacked. Behind the shelves, officers found food wrappers and a second sleeping area. Evan had not fled after I saw him in the kitchen. He had climbed into the attic, entered the shaft, and remained inside the house while police searched above him. He had listened as we described him. He had stayed while officers carried away his blanket and notebook. When we returned from Graham's sister's house, Evan was still there. He had been moving between the basement and the walls. The realization made me grip the edge of the kitchen counter. But the shaft contained more than food wrappers. It contained dozens of objects taken from our family: Paige's missing bracelet, Owen's old-school photograph, one of Graham's ties, a birthday card my mother had sent me, receipts, mail, a spare house key we thought we had lost years earlier. At the bottom of a canvas bag was a stack of family photographs printed from our social media accounts. Evan had marked dates and names on the backs. This was not a desperate man occupying a familiar hiding place. He had been studying us long before the inspection. The police searched every inch of the cavity. They found a small opening behind the chimney bricks on the 2nd floor. Inside was a metal cash box. It did not contain money. It contained a red leather ledger. Randall Price had hidden it more than a decade earlier. The ledger documented payments from tenants who had rented several illegal apartments owned through shell companies. It included bribes to inspectors, forged repair invoices, and settlements paid to families after unsafe conditions caused injuries. One of the buildings had suffered a fire. A woman and her young son had died. Randall had concealed evidence that faulty wiring had been reported repeatedly before the fire. Evan had known the ledger existed because he once overheard his father arguing with a business partner. He had searched for it for years. That was the hidden truth Colin believed they could sell. But Detective Chen found something else inside the box: a newspaper clipping about the fire. 2 faces had been circled: the dead woman and her son. Beneath the clipping, Randall had written one sentence. Evan gave them the key. The son had not died in the fire. The early news report had been wrong. He had escaped through a rear stairwell. The child was Colin Mercer. Evan and Colin were not strangers who met through a car sale. They had known each other as boys. Evan had stolen his father's building key and given it to Colin so he could enter the apartment after school. On the day of the fire, that key allowed Colin to escape. His mother did not. Randall blamed Evan for exposing him to the family and sent him away shortly afterward. Years later, Colin recognized Evan's name on the car inquiry. Evan recognized Colin immediately. Their reunion had not been accidental. Colin wanted evidence against Randall. Evan wanted the ledger. Both believed it remained inside our house, but once Evan entered the attic, his goal changed. He found the ledger's hiding place from the shaft. He could have taken it and left. Instead, he stayed because he found our photographs, school schedules, and mail. He had spent years believing his father had erased him from the house. Then he saw another family living inside it. Sleeping in his old rooms, eating at his mother's table, using the pantry where his father had hidden the ladder. To Evan, we had not purchased a house. We had occupied the only place he believed had ever belonged to him. The leftovers were not taken because he was hungry, not entirely. He ate what we ate because he wanted to insert himself into our routines. He washed the dishes because he did not see himself as an intruder. He saw himself as a member of the household no one acknowledged. The stolen objects were not trophies. They were pieces of the family life he believed had replaced his own. The photograph in Paige's backpack had been his final attempt to frighten us away. He wanted the house empty. He wanted it back. Police found Evan that evening inside Nathan Vale's garage. Nathan had no idea he was there. Evan had entered through a roof vent and hidden above the ceiling after leaving our house through the drainage ditch. He was carrying the keys to our home, Colin's orange lanyard, and one of our family photographs. In the photograph, Graham, Paige, Owen, and I stood together on the front porch the day we moved in. Evan had drawn himself between us. He confessed to entering the attic, stealing food, and watching our family. He denied intending to hurt anyone. The photograph of Paige, he claimed, was only a warning. The police found a knife in his coat. They also found a printed listing for a rental house 2 towns away. On the margins, Evan had written notes about the roofline, window locks, and the number of people living there. We were not the first family he had watched. We were simply the first to discover him. Months later, the county opened an investigation into Randall Price's properties. Colin accepted a plea agreement for helping Evan bypass our security and enter the house. Nathan moved away before winter. I never had the chance to apologize to him in person. We sold the house the following spring. Before listing it, we disclosed everything. The hidden shaft was filled with concrete. The exterior access panel was removed. The attic floor was rebuilt. On our final night there, we ate dinner on paper plates because the kitchen had already been packed. Graham ordered too much food. 2 slices of pizza remained in the box. For a moment, none of us moved. Then Owen picked them up and dropped them into the trash. No one wanted leftovers. As we turned off the lights, I looked toward the pantry. I thought about the empty foil folded neatly on the refrigerator shelf. That had been the first clue. I had believed someone was stealing food from our family. The truth was far more disturbing. Evan had not been stealing our meals. He had been rehearsing his place among us.